I just applied for my new second German passport. I've had these two until now, but one of them is full. So in this video I want to explain to you why we need passports in the first place, why some are stronger than others, and why and how I got two identical ones. So first of all, why do we even need passports? A passport has two main purposes. Number one, proof of citizenship. Obviously, only citizens of a specific country can get this country's passport. And number two, identification. A passport generally is the only acceptable form of identification for international travel, apart from a few exceptions where your ID card works as well, like in the European Union or Mercosur, for example. So basically, you need a passport to show who you are and where you're from when you arrive at a foreign country's border. The first known person to ever have something that served a purpose similar to what a passport nowadays is too was this guy here. A paper from approximately 450 BC stated that Nehemiah, that's him, who was an official of the king of Persia, asked the king for permission to travel to Judea. The king then gave him a letter to the governors beyond the river requesting safe passage as he traveled through their lands. And that is also pretty much what a passport nowadays is too. It's basically a letter from the government of your country of citizenship saying, hey, this is one of us, please let him pass. If there's any issue, please contact our embassy. Over the years, passports in all different variations became more and more relevant as more land was claimed by different colonies, and traveling through those lands suddenly required permissions. Sometimes getting a passport was also connected to some kind of requirement, like having paid your taxes, which means that only citizens who have paid their taxes were allowed to travel. Then at some point in the medieval ages, the Italians started issuing pasaportos to travelers who arrived at their seaports, which is where the passport got its name from. And then over the next couple of years, traveling became more and more popular, more and more relevant, and more governments decided that it was a great idea to issue some kind of travel document to their citizens. And then finally, as recent as in 1980, the ICAO, the International Civil Aviation Organization, introduced standards for passports and even machine-readable passports, which are more or less the ones that we have today. That's also when the different kinds of passports were introduced and standardized, like the emergency passport, the diplomatic passport, service passport, public affairs passport, and so on, but that's a topic for another video. Okay, so now we know a bit about the history of the passport, but why do we even need one in the first place? Why can't you just go anywhere as if you were traveling to another city? I mean, we live in the 21st century and don't need a letter to the governors beyond the river, so what's all this about? Well, of course, every country has their own regulations and reasons for those regulations. And we'll get to why some passports are stronger than others in just a second. But generally, if you want to go to a foreign country, you need permission to do so in form of a visa. Fun fact, there's only one country on the planet that doesn't issue tourist visas at all, because anyone can just go without one. It's the only country that doesn't require a visa from anyone to visit. So can you guess which one it is? The Seychelles. So apart from this little island group, every other country wants to know who you are and what you want to do in their country before or when you arrive. That is why you have a passport with the most important information to verify who you are, and generally when you apply for a visa, you will be asked about the purpose of your visit. But of course, we all know that if you want to visit a specific country, let's take Canada for example, depending on your country of citizenship, you will or will not need a visa to enter Canada. For example, US citizens don't, while Indian citizens do. Why is that? Why are some passports more powerful than others? There's an article related to this on henleyglobal.com, which by the way is a website I really like and you definitely should check out. You can take a deeper look if you like, but the bottom line of this article is that allowing citizens from certain countries, usually those with a higher GDP per capita, to enter your country is likely to pay greater economic dividends in the form of trade, tourism, and investments. These individuals from wealthier nations are also less likely to place a burden on the host country's social and economic system, for example, through the cost of unauthorized migration. Of course, GDP per capita isn't the only factor, but it does correlate quite strongly with how powerful a country's passport is in a global comparison, and there are good reasons for that. So basically, if I, as an individual from and citizen of Germany, want to go to Canada, they don't see a risk that I would use their system and their wealth to their disadvantage, which is why they consider it unnecessary or even counterproductive to put me through the visa process just to visit the country. Because even if I were someone that didn't grow up in Germany but has the German passport, I could just go to Germany completely legally and have a similar quality of life without having to break any rules in Canada. On the other hand, individuals from countries with high political or economic instability and lower GDP per capita are considered as posing a higher risk for overstaying their visas. That is why many countries want to do further individual checks on citizens from certain countries with a lower GDP per capita to make sure that they don't misuse their right to visit the country. And that is what the visa process is for. So now you know all the basics, why we need passports in the first place and why some passports are stronger than others. But why would someone get two? And why would someone get two identical passports? You probably know that some people get two passports or have two passports because they have two citizenships. That's great because sometimes one of these passports has visa-free access to some countries that the other one doesn't have, and vice versa. And also these people can go live in both places without any restrictions. Nice. But not all of us have this privilege. I only have one country of citizenship, which, thank God though, has one of the strongest passports in the world. If we look at the global ranking based on how many countries passports around the world can access visa-free, we can see here that Germany, together with a few other European passports, is in second place, so I really cannot complain. And on this list we can definitely verify that at the top, all the countries are known for having a pretty stable economy and are politically stable on the international spectrum, and also have a relatively high GDP per capita. If we now look at the other end of the list, the weakest passports in the world, we can see that most of these countries are or recently were in some kind of crisis which resulted in big instabilities. So most countries see a risk that if people from these nations came to their country, they could misuse their right to visit by staying longer than allowed or placing a burden in another way to the host country's economy. So even if I can't get any other passport than the German one, why would I get two of them? I mean, it's not like I can visit more countries with two identical passports. Or actually, I can. That's the point. You see, GDP per capita and economic and political stability aren't the only factors that make some countries' passports better than others. Some countries also really hate each other. For example, as an Israeli citizen, it's basically impossible to go to some of the Arab countries. And there's a similar situation between Armenia and Azerbaijan, who are also not really best friends. So when it's literally impossible for their citizens to go to certain other countries, you can also imagine that it might also cause some problems if you visited these places before. So the first reason for someone who travels a lot to get two passports is to separate the stamps of the countries that don't like each other. That way there's no way for them to see that you've been to the other bad country when you go to their country. So for example, Azerbaijan in passport 1, Armenian passport 2, Ukrainian passport 1, Russia in passport 2, Israel in passport 1, Kuwait in passport 2, and so on. You get the point. In most cases, having a stamp in your passport of a country that the country you want to enter doesn't like isn't that big of a problem. Just be prepared for some additional questioning, and in most cases you're good to go. But especially Israel is a special case because many countries around them hate Israel so much that they will officially deny you entry or reject your visa application if they see that you've been to Israel. That is why Israel doesn't give passport stamps anymore, because obviously they still want people to come and visit their country. But if you have a stamp from a neighboring country, let's take Jordan for example, which makes it visible that you entered overland from Israel, that stamp has the same effect. And reason number 2 why people get two identical passports is also mostly relevant for people that travel a lot. I, for example, work as a flight attendant and I need my passport at least once or twice a week for work. Now, if I want to get a visa for a trip I have planned, that takes a couple of days or even up to a few weeks. And I can't leave my passport at the embassy for them to process everything because I need the passport to go traveling for work. In these cases, it's really useful to have one passport to go traveling and a second passport to go get all the visas. So if you now want to know how you can travel to almost every country in Europe on just one train pass, click here. And if you want to see how it feels to fly Emirates first class for the very first time, then this video is for you. So thank you very much for watching and see you in the next one.